Come on in, Bolt fam, because what's happening in Los Angeles does not feel like a normal offseason. This feels like a decision point. And I'm telling you right now with full confidence, the Chargers are building a kind of rebuild that could bring real respect back to this franchise fast. When you stack a glaring need in the pass rush, a possible aggressive answer on the market, pressure in the secondary, and a strategic crossroads on offense, the message starts getting loud. This is not about panic. This is about direction. This is about a team that finally looks ready to attack its own weaknesses without losing its identity. So hit subscribe and stay with me through the end, because this changes the whole read on the Bolts. The most sensitive pressure point in this rebuild starts right here. The Chargers still have to protect the identity of their own defense. Odafe Oweh leaving in free agency opened up a real wound in the pass rush, and that cannot be brushed off like some minor detail. When he arrived last season, the pressure on known passing downs came alive, and once Khalil Mack got back from injury and teamed up with Oweh and Tuli Tuipolotu, that trio looked like a storm front crashing straight through opposing offenses. But now the picture is different. Bud Dupree is still on the roster. Kyle Kennard is still a developmental piece, but the issue is not just adding another body to the rotation. The issue is finding explosion for right now and a succession plan for later. That is why this draft angle hits so hard. Yes, Khalil Mack came back, but it is a one-year deal, and he is heading into his age 35 season. That does not erase his impact, but it absolutely forces the franchise to think in two directions at once. Compete now and prepare for what comes next. That is what a strong rebuild actually looks like. Not rebuilding to accept pain, rebuilding to keep the ceiling high while changing the pieces at the right time. And if there is one draft class that can help with that, it is this 2026 Edge class, which comes in loaded with depth and multiple types of pass rushing talent. Inside that picture, TJ Parker starts to look extremely interesting for Los Angeles. This is not some insider bomb saying he is definitely falling into the Chargers' lap. That would be too much. What this is a fit-based read. If he is there at pick 22, he is going to be very much in the conversation because the profile makes too much sense. Parker is a powerful edge rusher with a violent first strike, real play strength, and a motor that does not cool off. He is not a finished product, and the dip in production in 2025 cooled some of the hype around his ceiling. But that is exactly where the opportunity lives. When a prospect with NFL-ready power starts getting viewed with more caution, smart teams start seeing value where other people only see risk. And there is one more layer here that matters. The Chargers have internal connections to Clemson that could help them read this player better than a lot of other teams. That does not confirm anything, obviously, but it strengthens the logic. Because at the end of the day, Los Angeles does not just need another defender to patch a hole. They need somebody who fits the room, fits the culture, adds juice to the present, and most of all, carries the torch when Mack is no longer there. If they treat this main wound the right way, the entire rebuild starts to crackle with a different kind of energy. But a rebuild that wants to restore respect cannot survive on fixing the defense alone. At some point, it has to send a message to the rest of the league, and that is why Tyreek Hill's name, even with almost no buzz around him right now, lands with so much force in this conversation. Not as something confirmed, not as a hot negotiation, but as a market read that could heat up in a hurry once the draft smoke clears. The facts are simple. It has been weeks since free agency opened. Hill still does not have major public movement around his name. And in the NFL, sometimes silence is louder than chaos. Because silence opens windows. It creates room for patient teams. It creates room for front offices willing to wait for the market to reshuffle before they strike. And if the draft passes and Hill is still out there, the Chargers make sense in that picture. Not because of fan fiction, because of context. Justin Herbert still needs more firepower next to Ladd McConkey. Quentin Johnston has not made the leap a lot of people expected. And the Keenan Allen situation still leaves a giant question mark hanging over the receiver room like a thundercloud. That alone would justify a search for more explosiveness. But what makes this possibility even more fascinating is the reported tie to the new offensive coordinator. According to the report, Mike McDaniel is now the Chargers' offensive coordinator, and under him, Hill was at his absolute most terrifying in Miami. If that is the framework, then the fit is obvious. There is familiarity. There is real knowledge of how to weaponize a player like that. And there is a quarterback in Herbert who can turn vertical speed into a full-blown nightmare. Now let's cool it down for 1 second so we keep this grounded. None of that means the Chargers are actively working on Tyreek Hill right now. None of that means a move is close. What it does mean is something else. If the market chills, if the price shifts, If Los Angeles decides it needs an electric jolt on offense, the door does not feel crazy, and that matters. Because before, this would have sounded like a fantasy. Now it starts to feel like timing. Hill may not be the same all-out wrecking ball he was at his peak, and that needs to be said too. But he is still the kind of player who bends coverage, stretches the field, and forces defensive coordinators to rewrite the plan before kickoff. In an offense still searching for its true ceiling under Harbaugh, a piece like that would not just be a weapon, it would be a statement. It would be the Chargers telling the AFC West they are not rebuilding to be cute, they are rebuilding to be feared. And when a team looks like it can address its biggest wound in the draft while also staying alive for a market opportunity this explosive, the question changes. It is no longer whether there is a plan, the question becomes how far this franchise is really willing to go. And that is exactly where this rebuild starts showing whether it is just pretty talk or real roster-building courage. Because while most people are staring at the flashy names, the Chargers have another urgent problem pounding on the door: the secondary. Benjamin St-Juste leaving in free agency left the cornerback room more exposed. And even if the number he got in Green Bay explains why Los Angeles did not match it, the fallout is still there. You lose depth, you lose stability, and suddenly you are asking a young group to carry more weight than it should this early. Tarheeb Still and Cam Hart have talent, but talent without structure around it can turn into a stress test real fast. And with Chris O'Leary stepping in as the new defensive coordinator, there is pressure coming from both sides. He has to organize the unit, and at the same time, he cannot be handed a room full of cracks at one of the most delicate positions on the field. Taking a corner on day 2 or day 3 makes sense. The problem is the Chargers only have 5 picks and multiple holes all over the roster. When your draft capital is that limited, every unresolved weakness starts pushing the front office toward a different road. That is where Renardo Green enters the picture as a possible trade target. And the certainty level matters here. There is no sign of a deal in progress. There is no firm indication San Francisco is definitely moving him. What there is a read that if he does hit the market after the draft, Los Angeles would have real reason to watch that situation closely. And that is not nothing. Green has not developed the way the 49ers hope since being drafted in the second round in 2024. His PFF grade last season was rough, the mental lapses showed up, and naturally that cools outside interest. But you know what a player like that can also be? A scheme bet, a development bet, a low-cost swing on a twitchy, aggressive athlete who just needs the right staff to sharpen the edges. With 2 years of control left and a tiny cap number, that kind of move feels like smart rebuilding, not desperation. Because not every strong answer comes with fireworks and a giant headline. Sometimes the smartest move is the one that looks imperfect until the lights come on. And now I want to hear from Bolt Fam in the comments. Would you make that bet on Renardo Green if the price stayed low? Or would you rather see the Chargers solve it in the draft? Because that answer says a whole lot about the kind of rebuild you want to see in Los Angeles. And here comes the strategic contrast that makes all of this even more interesting. Because on one side, the Chargers look like they may be weighing ways to speed up the rebuild. On the other side, there is still one unfinished story hanging over this team, and it hits identity, history, and pure roster logic all at once. Keenan Allen is still unsigned. And the longer this drags out, the harder it becomes to pretend it is just a matter of time. Let's separate the layers. Publicly, Joe Ortiz said he wanted Allen back. On Allen's side, there were also clear signs that he wanted to stay in Los Angeles. If both of those things are still true, then the delay naturally raises eyebrows. Because when both sides want it, these things usually do not sit frozen for this long unless something in the middle is jamming the gears. We cannot say for sure what that is from here. It could be money. It could be role. It could be timing. It could be the franchise waiting until after the draft before making the call. But the main fact is this: the stalemate has become a signal. And that signal matters because Allen is still a productive receiver. Last season proved that. 81 catches, 777 yards, 4 touchdowns, 122 targets. Maybe he is no longer carrying an offense by himself the way he once did, but he is still reliable, still savvy, still a quarterback safety blanket when everything around him starts shaking. So the question is not whether he can help. The question is whether he still fits the way the Chargers want to reshape this offense moving forward. That shifts the meaning of the previous block too. Because when Keenan's return stops feeling automatic, every outside option starts carrying more weight. If the team brings him back, great. You keep leadership, familiarity, and an emotional bridge to the fan base. If they do not, then the draft and the market stop being luxury and start becoming urgency. Then Tyreek Hill is no longer just a flashy name. Then a rookie receiver is no longer just a bonus. Then the rebuild starts showing its real face. It can honor the past without being handcuffed by it. And that is the whole point. A strong rebuild is not about building against the franchise's history. It is about building without being afraid of hard choices. Keenan Allen deserves total respect for what he means to the Chargers. But respect cannot become paralysis. If the front office believes another path brings more explosion, more youth, or more flexibility to the offense, then that decision has to be made with conviction. Because a franchise trying to earn respect again cannot live forever in the space between tribute and hesitation. At some point, you honor the legacy and still accept that the next step demands a different blueprint. So step back and look at the whole picture now. Pass rush needing both impact and succession. The market may be opening a window for a bold swing on offense, the secondary demanding creativity and guts, and the Keenan Allen situation forcing a choice between emotion and direction. Put all of those signals together and the message gets loud. The Chargers are not in a rebuild just trying to survive. They are in a rebuild trying to get their respect back with posture, conviction, and real ambition. There is no guarantee every move is going to happen, and that honesty matters. But there is something very real building in Los Angeles right now, a sense of direction, and that changes everything. So tell me in the comments which path you would choose to speed up this return to respect for the Bolts, because I'll tell you this much. If the Chargers nail these decisions, the entire league is going to have to look at this franchise in a whole new way.